Welcome to The Fulcrum Point, the podcast that looks at how Catholic schools are impacting our communities. This show is brought to you by the Fulcrum Foundation, and I'm your host, Brian Callanan. In this episode, we're talking about early childhood education. This is a system that has been in crisis for years in Washington state, long before the pandemic, and the research shows early learning is crucial for child development, which goes far beyond academics. But thousands of kids under age 5 don't have access to care. It's a challenge for families and for caregivers trying to make a living wage, too. So, what kind of programs is Fulcrum offering to change that dynamic? And how are families, Catholic and not Catholic, responding? We're going to be talking about this and a lot more on this episode, and we're going to let some of our students set the stage for us.
Hi, my name is Karis. I am a freshman at Seton Catholic. My advice to students in preschool is to dream big. You can be anything you want as long as you work hard.
Hi, my name is Colton. I am a junior at Seton Catholic High School. My advice to students in preschool is to never stop learning and always stay curious.
My first guest is Dave Mayer. He is the director of the Early Childhood Education Program for the Archdiocese of Seattle. Dave, thanks a lot for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Let's jump in here. I want some help with the big picture perspective here, if I could. Childcare is very simply not where it needs to be in Washington state overall. The National Institute for Early Education Research put out a report last year that showed nationwide Washington is ranked 33rd among our states when it comes to access to quality early learning programs for 4-year-olds. I want to put the reasons why that's happening to the side. That's a whole other podcast. But I do want to ask you what I think is the even bigger question. What happens when kids don't have access to quality early childhood education? Why should people care about this, Dave?
Yeah, what we found is that it's well documented that 90% of critical brain development actually happens before kindergarten. And when kids get into quality early childhood education programs, we know that that education leads to better outcomes for kindergarten readiness, positive effects on language, math, and social skills, improved K through 12 test scores throughout their academic journey, better high school graduation rates, more likely to be enrolled in college and have that college enrollment experience, less crime, and less dependence on social services later in life.
There's so much connected here. And I think about, too, when people don't have access to childcare, I'm thinking about families here. It's a loss of income for them. It's a loss of productivity for employers, too. I've seen some figures that show that's in the billions when people don't have access to quality care. When you talk to families about this, and I know you've done a lot of that, what are they saying to you, the challenges that they're going through to try to get quality education for their young ones?
Yeah, one of the things that we can do for them is offer them a quality education for a full day. We've really worked with our schools to be able to respond to the community when parents are calling the schools. Hey, we would love our kids to be able to come here, but both of our family members work. We need them to be able to be there for the whole day. And so we can work with schools to be able to get them into licensed space to be able to have their kids be with us for more than those 4 hours.
Right.
Have them be there the same length of time as their second and third graders that also might be at that school as well.
That 4-hour piece is important because if you have kids for less than 4 hours, you don't need to worry about accreditation. But if it's more, then you do. And so actually accrediting these different programs that are in the Archdiocese program is a big part of this. Can I just take a jump back here? I wanted to look at what you saw 5 years ago when you started your job with the Archdiocese, which has 74 Catholic schools across Western Washington, kind of a school district all its own, I would argue, 21,000 students K through 12. Where were the early childhood education systems then, and what have you built them into now?
When I first got this job, I went on a tour of all of our 56 early learning programs that we have throughout our Catholic schools. I had the opportunity to sit and talk with the early learning leaders at each location, just figure out what are your challenges, what are the things that are going well, what are the things that you need. A couple of things that we found were that people really wanted to be able to have professional development focused specifically on early learning.
We're talking about the providers here being able to have that kind of training and education, okay?
Yeah, because oftentimes they would get caught into being on an island by themselves, and the professional development they were getting was more for the kindergarten through 5th grade teachers.
Okay.
And so we created a space where we have a virtual professional development day now that is completely focused on early learning. We have a couple other times throughout the year where we're getting people together to be able to share resources, talk about their programs, to be able to get people connected with each other so they know that they're not on their own. And then the other thing we found was are the current programs serving the people in the community and what they actually need? And so a lot of time has been spent on looking at, are the hours that you're providing enough for the people that are going to want to come to this school?
Yeah.
And then at times that we figured out that they weren't, we were able to go through a process to be able to get them in state compliance, to be able to get them licensed. And the position that I had made that easier because I had access to the state to make sure they didn't have to concentrate on all the administrative functions of that, of all of the project management, of all of the facilities aspects of it, that I could help with that, and they could continue to do the good work that they were doing to be with the kids and get them on a good start for their academic journey.
This is such an important part of this, Dave, and we're going to be talking with Dick Abrams a little bit later on in this podcast, who with his late wife Sharon provided a very generous gift to fund the role that you're in. And we were talking before the podcast about this. Yes, there were these programs throughout the Archdiocese, but maybe someone had 10% of their brain or their job with this whole administrative piece. Now that you're able to oversee it, you're able to really help a lot of these schools become accredited. Can you talk about that? Because that's work that you're doing right now. Beforehand, maybe we didn't have all these schools accredited, and now a lot more are going along that route.
Yeah, even just over the course of the last 4 years, we have licensed 15 new programs.
Nice work.
And what that has done is it's provided so many more families that maybe weren't looking at our schools as a place to start in early learning. And I'm an example of that. The school that my daughter goes to wasn't a school that had a full day program. And so she went to a different place for early learning. And now that school is fully licensed. If she was a preschooler now, she would have been able to be a part of that program.
That is such an important part of this. And I think a lot of the people who are school administrators out here know this. Having that pre-K program is so important to actually getting kids. It's a feeder program for their elementary school. Would you agree? You're definitely seeing that trend, I would think.
Absolutely. And we are looking for, if a school right now has a 4-year-old program and only a 4-year-old program, how can we get them to have a 3-year-old program? Mm-hmm. If they have a 4 and a 3-year-old program, how can we get them to have a 2-year-old program?
And some of them have programs for infants
all the
too.
way to infants.
Yeah.
And so I just think that the faster we can get families connected to our schools, the more they're connected to our faith community, the more they're connected to our school community as a whole, I think is just all positives. And when they come to our early learning programs and get the wonderful experience with our providers that we have at all of our schools, they don't leave. They like to stay in our schools all the way through their 8th grade and high school experiences too.
That is a good sign. And I wanted to talk about those providers because I have to think one of the big challenges you're facing in your work right now is finding staff, because not as many people, let's just face it, there are not as many people going into the field of early childhood education as there once were. Paying those workers a livable wage is a constant struggle. Can you talk about this challenge and how you're reckoning with this and how Fulcrum is helping with this too?
Working in our schools is one of the benefits that our early learning staff really have, because they're connected to a larger community than just early learning on its own. They can see the kids continue their way up through their academic journey. And I've been in schools where I've been walking around with the early education teacher, and we walked past a group of 5th graders, and the joy that those 5th graders still show to their preschool teachers and their pre-K teachers is pretty cool. So it's a challenge overall. There's less people that are going into the field. The pay in some cases is not what you would want, but I think that we're trying to do a good job of continuing to look at that, look at different opportunities to be able to leverage dollars from the state, from the city, to be able to help. We do a lot of advocacy with the legislature to continue to look at how can we raise wages for early learning staff? How can we get to a point where getting education and college credits in early learning easier to inspire more people to want to go into this field?
And this is the whole accreditation process that I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but you're accredited by the state. I mean, you're working with some state funding. You're working with local funding in some cases. You're working with funding from the Fulcrum Foundation. That sounds like quite a juggling act, but I think this really gets to the matter that I'm trying to get to, which is where these programs grow from here. You're trying to bring in all these different dollars. You're trying to grow this. And I know in talking with a few people, it might even grow beyond the schools. There might be an idea to have a standalone early learning center through the Archdiocese that would get some funding from the Fulcrum Foundation. Can you talk about that piece? Because I feel like that's the future we're looking at here.
Yeah, in order to grow our programs, our schools are limited in the capacity that they have because they're serving preschool all the way through 8th grade. We scale as much as we can in those schools. We have portables. We're using spaces in the parish. We're using community spaces. But in order for us to really scale, we need to look outside of those 4 walls of the school. And we're doing that by creating infant through pre-K standalone centers where those kids can feed to multiple schools in a region.
Right.
We're looking at potentially partnering with things like Catholic Community Services to have childcare in housing that they might be putting together.
Okay. Yeah.
We're looking at how can we connect with corporations and organizations in our city to, provide childcare on site to be able to help workforce. And so there's all these different ways for us to be able to expand and grow our programs. We just need to be able to continue to have good conversations with people and partnerships and leverage dollars to be able to make those things work.
That's an amazing change here. Growing this sounds like a very important part of this because that need for early learning is just going to continue to grow as you see this program move into the future. What do you want the public to know about this? Because we're talking about kids who are Catholic and not Catholic accessing these early learning centers that are throughout the Archdiocese. And I think a lot of people need to know about this, about where this program is going.
Yeah, and one of the big gaps in our state is toddler and infant programs.
Okay.
And I think one of our big growth areas is going to be expansion beyond our pre-K and preschool, our 3 and our 4-year-old programs, to really kind of work on how can we connect with families, connect with parents into that toddler and infant range, because those are the slots that have the least amount of slots in our state right now. So when we're looking at it not just from you're going to be with us just for your year before you go into kindergarten, but we'd like you to be with us throughout that full early learning time frame.
In looking at that, I have to think that there's a demand for that, and parents are asking for that, because you do have a lot of families where both partners are working. And I wanted to touch on that too, because I think that's an important part of this.
Yeah, we have schools every day that are getting calls from parents with 1-year-olds and 2-year-olds, not just to ask if we have programming for that, but to get on a list to make sure that when their kids are 3 years old and 4-year-olds, that they have a spot at those schools, because the access to our programs, good quality programs, Catholic programs for Catholics and non-Catholics is just, it's hard to come by. And we create a good quality program for them to come and be a part of.
And can you expand on that quality piece real quick? Because I think that word can often get glossed over, but that's a very important part of this. Quality early childhood education leads to quality education in the future and a better quality, I guess, of a student that graduates. Can you touch on that piece, please?
Yeah, we're in a really unique atmosphere where our kids, if they continue on with us, are going to be with us in their K-8 and then into their high school environment as well. And the studies have shown that if a early learning child that's had a good experience in their early learning years, their peers will catch up with them by the time they're in 2nd grade. However, if they stay in a quality elementary school, middle school, high school level, then the gains that they had in early learning will continue with them all the way up. And so we're in a unique position because of the quality of our early learning programs, the quality of our elementary schools, through middle schools to high schools. They're keeping that edge all the way up through their academic journey.
Very impressive. Dave, can you talk to me here as we start to wrap up just about where you see this program for early childhood education being 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Can you project that for me? What do you think?
Being able to work with Dick Abrams and to be able to work with all of our early learning leaders in the Archdiocese, I just see us, expanding far beyond our schools to really be the national model of what early learning can look like throughout our state, throughout our archdiocese. I get calls already from other archdioceses to be able to talk about what we're doing, and I'd love to continue to get those calls every day to be able to say, what is it that you guys are doing to build these programs, to expand these programs, to make it easier for families to access. And our ability to be able to do that is to continue to do advocacy through the state, to leverage state dollars, to continue to work with our schools to be innovative and visionary about where we can expand programs, because that's where we're going to be able to go from 2,000 kids to 5,000 to 10,000 and more.
Dave Mayer, Director of Early Childhood Education for the Archdiocese of Seattle, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Up next, a guest that helped launch this program with a heartfelt story you really need to hear. That's coming up on The Fulcrum Point.
Hi, my name is Lance, and I am a senior at Seton Catholic. My advice to students in preschool is to keep chasing your dreams, even when the road gets tough.
Hi, my name is Lauren, and I am a sophomore at Seton Catholic. My advice to preschoolers is to always be kind and accepting to everyone.
Welcome back to The Fulcrum Point, which is all about how Catholic education is impacting our communities. And I'm joined by Dick Abrams, who, with his late wife Sharon, provided the gift that launched the early education program of the Seattle Archdiocese. Dick, welcome to the show, and thank you very much.
Glad to be here.
I wanted to talk to you about this because you've been a supporter of education for many years, providing help for grade schools, high schools, colleges, the seminary, trade schools too. But a few years ago, your focus changed to early childhood education. Why is that? What happened?
With my late wife and I thinking about where we could make an impact, I started interviewing individuals associated with education, parents, teachers, others, to the question, where do you think the biggest impact can be made? The answer was always early childhood education. So I started learning a little bit about it and decided that's where we're going to make a commitment.
What did you learn? Why do you think investing in early childhood education is so important?
Human brain development, roughly 80% occurs before 5 years old, and the rest is pretty straightforward.
You really thought this is where you could make the most impact in young people's lives. And it's not just the kids. I mean, I'm thinking about the families. This has a bigger impact on society too, I think.
Absolutely. And not just society, but for the Catholic Church.
A huge part of it. And that's why the Fulcrum Foundation has been taking your gift and putting it into its early childhood education program. What's your goal for this ECE program for the Archdiocese via the Fulcrum Foundation? What are you hoping this program can achieve?
You know, currently we're serving roughly 2,000 children under 5 years old, and the population in Western Washington under 5 is just short of 200,000. We should be serving a much greater proportion of the children of God. So the growth so far has been incredible, but it's nothing compared to what we're going to see in the future.
I think so too, and it's such a diverse group of young people we're talking about here. We're talking about kids who are Catholic, kids who are not Catholic, people of all different racial backgrounds. I think that's an important part of your gift too. You're really trying to make sure that everybody's kind of coming into the tent here.
All children, regardless of background.
Why is that diversity important to you?
As children of God, we're all in the same universe and should not be judgmental of each other.
Agreed. Dick, you're in your late 80s. You have dedicated yourself to help out our youngest generation. Do you look at this as a legacy? How do you look at your gift and where this is going to grow?
You know, I'm not a great believer in leaving a legacy, so to speak, but I believe in making an impact, and this will be felt for many, many years into the future.
And this is something that you talked about with your late wife, and I know that it was important to her and to you. I have to think that this was an emotional choice that you made as a couple to make this gift.
Yes, very definitely. In addition to being emotional, it was, in hindsight, very spiritual.
Why is that?
We go through life doing things, hopefully the right things, but are we listening to the Holy Spirit? And as I reflect back, that was a very powerful part of making the decision.
I'm glad you were listening. When you've gone to these different facilities where they do have these different early childhood education centers, what is that like for you to see these students, to see these teachers, to see these young people and their families growing in this way? What does that mean to you?
You know, it's a feeling of great vibrancy to see the youth enjoying themselves and the enthusiasm of absolutely every single individual teacher, principal involved. I mean, they are truly dedicated to the education of children.
It is beautiful to see. When I talk about growing this program, there's a certain number of schools in the Archdiocese we're talking about here, 74 of them up and down Western Washington here. I think the growth beyond that is probably going to be a situation where potentially you'd have a childcare and early learning facility of some nature. Do you see the future in that way too?
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the biggest part of my vision, is that we can continue as a church function, but not on church property.
I see. And what does that do? How does that change the dynamic?
Well, as an example, let's take a relatively remote location with a small population. That part of the state isn't going to travel into Seattle or Tacoma, but if we can supply resources in the local community, we can provide early childhood education.
That sounds amazing. And that's really where you want this program to go.
Yes, I want to saturate Western Washington.
I think we're getting there. I guess just to start to wrap up with you here, Dick, I've asked you about where you see this going, and these standalone facilities sound like a really interesting part of this. Tell me about your message to families going forward who are saying, well, is early childhood education really that important? I think you would say yes, and I think you would like to see the acceptance of this program, the growth of a program like this, continue to grow into the future.
I would, and I feel like the general consensus within our Catholic community is more and more awareness of the need and the benefit of educating our youth.
I feel the same. Dick, is there anything else I haven't asked you about that really speaks to you, speaks to your heart about why this program is important and what it means to you as well?
One additional thing is that under Dave's leadership,
Dave Mayer, who we just talked to earlier in the podcast, right?
Yes. The program is of a quality and out front enough that it's being recognized across the country, and hopefully this will happen
throughout the country, using Western Washington as a model, it sounds like, for the rest of the country.
Absolutely.
That would be beautiful to see. Dick Abrams, whose gift to the Fulcrum Foundation launched the early childhood education program for the Seattle Archdiocese. Thank you for being on the program.
Pleasure to be here.
When we return, we are talking to an early childhood education provider in the Archdiocese, who's also the mother of three. She has been there, done that, and she'll give us a family's perspective on this. That's coming up next on The Fulcrum Point.
Hi, my name is Owen. I am a senior here at Seton Catholic. My advice to preschoolers is to always have trust in God and know He's always with you.
Hi, my name is Soha, and I'm a junior at Seton Catholic. My advice to students in preschool would be to always dream big, because anything is possible if you believe in yourself.
Joining me now is Martha DeSapio, who is the preschool director of a thriving early childhood education program at St. Luke's up in Shoreline. There are 70 kids in this program. She's raising 3 kids of her own who went through that program as well. Martha, how are you doing? Thanks for being here.
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I wanted to talk about this with you in terms of how this worked out for your family. How old are your kids now?
My kids are 9, 7, and 5 right now, 3rd grade, 1st grade, and kindergarten.
And loving it. All right. I wanted to ask, how was this for you, putting them through this program at St. Luke's? Finding childcare that fits a family is not easy. It costs money. What was that process like for you?
It was fabulous. When we arrived at St. Luke, my daughter was in pre-K for 3-year-olds. My second daughter was in pre-K for 4-year-olds. And my son was in 1st grade. And my dream came true because my minivan would get loaded every morning and we'd all go to the same school and get dropped off. The preschool teachers would welcome my kids with their warm and loving arms and check in on how they are doing. And they were happy every day going to preschool. And they're still happy now going to kindergarten, 1st grade, and 3rd grade.
Wow. You should write a book about this, The Secret of My Parental Success. This is something else.
Tony and I will work on that book pretty soon, The Secret of Our Parental Success.
Okay,
yes.
okay. Well, we'll circle back here. Now you're the preschool director of this ECE program up at St. Luke's, serving a very diverse group of students from all different backgrounds. Tell us about that, how you've been able to grow this program, too.
Sure. This program is great at St. Luke. We have fabulous teachers, which I think is just the foundation of a great early learning program. When the parents come on tour and meet the teachers at open house, they immediately see that this is a place that they feel comfortable and welcome to bring their children. For some of the families, their children have been in a daycare program before. Some of the families have never had their kids be out of their own home for care, and this is the first time for them to turn over their child into an early learning program, and they feel comfortable and welcomed to be in our school program. Being part of the St. Luke Parish community is a big part of that too. The families often want that faith component to feel connected to their parish. And they look forward to their children being ready for kindergarten and going all the way through 8th grade.
What was it that called you to take on this position as a preschool director? As we've been talking about in this program, not as many people are going into this field, but you jumped in and decided to do it. Why?
I taught first grade for about 17 years and kindergarten for a couple of years.
You've been regressing. I get it.
I've been going down the pipeline.
Love it.
And have just landed in a place of early learning where, as Dave Mayer knows, the focus on early learning is getting those foundational skills for children ready for a career of education. Early learning gives us an opportunity to spend so much time with children in play, where children are just, their brains are just developing so many new skills of interaction with one another, inquiry, communication, problem solving, and children at this young age can really explore those through play.
And what was it that called you to do it?
I had an opportunity to move from being a classroom teacher into a leadership opportunity. I really love working with the teachers and seeing the wise teachers in our program who have many years of experience teaching young children. They just know and love these children so deeply. They know and understand how young children learn. They observe the children learning in their best environment. They meet each child where they are when they arrive. They see how they need a little support. They make observations and they guide by the side. Being able to support the teachers in the background is a new way that I can be a part of this great world of Catholic education. Being a part of a leadership team at St. Luke has been a fabulous opportunity.
It sounds like a lot of people are clamoring to get into this program. It's a pretty big program from what I'm understanding, and I'm trying to figure out what attracts people to it. I think part of it is the diversity of students you have there. I think a part of it is the quality educators you have there.
St. Luke has a fabulous program from 3-year-olds all the way through 8th grade. Our school is an international baccalaureate school, which does draw people to that world of inquiry. And the early learning piece of an international baccalaureate education is that play is the true driver of inquiry. And in our early learning program, we are a play-based preschool that children have an amazing opportunity to spend time in play, building conversations with one another, learning problem-solving skills, learning to inquire about what comes next, what consequences may happen through play.
I'm sure there's other people out there that are running preschools that are taking notes right now. What is it that families are saying to you when they're coming to your program? Where are they coming in?
When families come to St. Luke to look at our program, we see families that are looking for full-time care. We see families that are looking for part-time care. So I know that having the options of many programs is attractive to families. We try to be an open program for all families. And
Catholic, non-Catholic.
Catholic, non-Catholic. I think being in the Northwest, it's an attractive place to move. And families that just have moved to town, we have a place for them. We have families that have moved to St. Luke from internationally and speak different languages in their home. And we try our best to make sure that we are a welcoming community to all families, no matter your language and your background. And we try to be the place that is welcoming to a diverse community.
That's very important. I did want to talk about the future here. When you talk about the growth of your program, where other programs could grow across the state here when it comes to early childhood education within the Archdiocese here, how do you want to grow your program? And what can you tell other schools that are trying to replicate the model that you have at St. Luke's?
We are busting at the seams at St. Luke from preschool all the way through 8th grade. We would love to grow a program to have a room for toddlers and infants if we had the space on our campus. I think that's a hope that we would love to see happen in not just our school, but many other schools in the Archdiocese of Seattle.
Yeah, and I know Fulcrum has helped in the past with equipment and playground materials and things of that nature, which is huge.
Fulcrum has been great. Fulcrum has supported our program through, hands-on materials for our program, but also through the professional development for our teachers. The teachers have been seeking professional development for ways to do best practices in early childhood education, especially of how to teach academic standards in a play-based environment. They just crave the best practices of how to make play the center of learning, but also weave in those important kindergarten readiness skills. And the Fulcrum Foundation has provided fabulous funding and professional development to really focus on what is best for young learners.
And we will see more of that, I know, in the future with the Fulcrum Foundation, working with St. Luke's and so many other schools in our region here. This is Martha DeSapio, Director of the Early Childhood Education Program, the Preschool Director at St. Luke's. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone out there listening to The Fulcrum Point, the podcast that's taking a close look at the impact of Catholic schools across Western Washington. It's brought to you by the Fulcrum Foundation, and if you'd like to learn more about their work, check out their website at fulcrumfoundation.org. I'm Brian Callanan. It's been my pleasure to listen with you and learn. See you next time.